All right. So where did I leave off? This is going to be part 2 of the Drive Jive live at 5 with your host, Frank Monday, your host with the most. Trying to merge into traffic here. Yeah. Ooh, traffic's lighter at this hour, just slightly. Isn't that nice? So, Jordan Peterson is the subject of my analysis due to the fact that I've watched, I don't know, a couple of 100 hours of his lectures. Is that right? The lectures can range anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, and there are dozens of them on the internet, and I've clicked on them dozens of times. So does that constitute at least 100 hours of research on the individual, at least listening to him talk? And I always thought that he had a kind of desperation in his voice, and not a sick desperation, but a desperation to legitimately find truth, whatever that may be. And that's a big peg for a lot of information that needs to be unpacked piece by piece. But there were a couple of videos where I watched him behind the scenes where he was talking about, he was being exposed for having talked about a hidden agenda, a liberal hidden agenda that he had to undermine the very principles with which he was talking about. So I can't think of the exact specific details right at this moment, but so who was the real individual that I was listening to? Was it the Professor Peterson that would get on stage and lecture about Western religion and philosophy, many biblical stories? Or was it the psychologist Dr. Peterson who behind the scenes was conferring with colleagues about, dare I say, conspiratorial neuro-linguistic programming with a goal of disenfranchisement of the Caucasian male, young adult? So I don't know, I'm still on the fence about that. I don't know if I trust the motherfucker or not. Just listening to his public lectures, for the most part, I thought that he was pretty dialed in on most things. But seeing some of the behind the scenes videos when he was conferring with the intelligentsia and how they actually viewed the situation and what their intention was, it seemed a little fishy. Anyway, my analysis doesn't have to take into consideration his character, really. And that's one of the biggest problems I've ever had with so-called internet gurus and self-help book gurus, gurus at all. Anybody who would put themselves on a pedestal and say, this message is worthy of transmission, and I do my best to live up to the premises that I'm putting here for your examination, when in truth they do not. So many times the character of the individual comes out in the end, and there just seems to be so much marring. I don't mean that they just turn out to be ordinary individuals, like one particular guru that I followed in my early 20s. Well, in my teens, actually. I had heard about and learned about his work in my teens and followed him up into my 20s. In my early 20s, I went and stayed with him as a kind of apprenticeship and assistant. And again, it just turns out that the man, the individual, is an ordinary man, and he's copying other people's work. And he never called himself more than, he said he was a translator, compiler, and elucidator of the Taoist teachings. So that tells you everything you need to know right there. But the stories of his life and the way he hinted at as an author, as purporting himself as a trustworthy author, did not turn out to be the truth. So then what is truth? If the man's character does not live up to the teaching in his, the message in his teaching, then is that teaching valid? And if it rings true to you as valid, is there any way to get beyond the man's character and say, okay, this man is working as a teacher and elucidator of the material and bringing light to the subject, but he himself is not a worthy example of the subject, and may even break all the rules, break all the foundational premises of these rules, but he's still valid as a teacher? I don't know. That's always been hard for me to grasp, because I personally don't feel comfortable being in the position of teaching the secrets of magic and qigong and kung fu and this type of thing unless I'm on my A game. And I've not always been on my A game, but the majority of my life I have gotten up early, done my qigong, done my kung fu, done my magic, do my studies. And so the real crux of the thing that I'm getting at for my own individual work is a synthesis of, I'll give you just a small bit of background in order to get you on page with me. I'm teaching at an academy, and I'm teaching English, and I got a group of 7th graders, I got 8th graders, 9th graders, and I have seniors. So I have a lot. Four or five different classes, 5, and groups of kids. And the range is too great. It should all be, in my opinion, it should all be at the high school level, because I don't really have anything to say to middle schoolers. Middle schoolers need to be focusing on rote learning of grammar principles and maybe studying the common fallacies in logic and doing some simple reading and writing, and I ain't got time for that shit. But anyway, I'm doing the best I can. So academic writing is the main focus. Yet at the same time, it's so goddamn dry and boring. And so I do some analysis of YouTube personalities and videos on principles, ancient Greek, Roman influences on the Western culture, some history points. Cicero, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Anaxagoras, the foundations of Western thinking, the Socratic method. Now, those things are interesting to me, and I want to try to make them interesting to 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. That's the problem. Part of the problem. That's hard to do. Anyway, my real conundrum is how to get them to learn creative writing, short stories, plot lines, character development, this kind of thing, but also work on their academic writing. So that brings us to why I chose Dr. Peterson as a subject of analysis, at least in my own work, not the work I'm bringing into the classroom. And I think, why do I find it so interesting to listen to his stories? And even though he's regurgitating all the old stories, the Bible, and that type of thing, and why do I think that it's beneficial to do that? Because it sparks something within me that is this essential drive to perform above the level of mediocrity. And having been in Chinese society for 2 decades, getting out of the hole of being pushed down and mitigated to the realm of mediocrity by all of the other cattle around you, because of their upbringing in a system where anything above mediocrity is not good. And I gotta qualify that somehow. Communism teaches people, and this may get cut off for this, I don't know, but it teaches people that you're all gonna get the same fucking amount no matter how hard you work. Now, sure, someone's gonna come along and yell at you if you're not working fast enough, if you're not producing enough, so on and so forth. So that's communism. There's no carrot, there's only a stick. The carrot only constitutes, we got 20 minutes, bro. We can still use the bus lane for 20 minutes. You guys don't have to panic. They're all panicking because we're in the bus lane, but it's not, the bus lane isn't off limits until 5 o'clock. So everyone, I'll break it down for you. Take, for example, the labor force at our school, the cleaners. They work pretty fucking mediocre, but they work pretty long hours, so they got to stretch that mediocrity out over the entire day. I was talking to one of the cleaners today because I'm interested in the very lowest in society, the dredges. They interest me because they interested Lao Tzu, and they're the foundation of the operation of our society, and you can't overlook them. The emperor in ancient China used to put on the clothes of a peasant and wander the countryside to get a feel for the general consensus of how well he was doing as an emperor. So, I'm not the emperor, but he who can address the troubles of the world is fit to rule the world. And so I feel like I gravitate towards low positions of work and interviewing janitors and the copy, the person who works in the copy room, and the ones who receive the lowest salaries and work the longest hours with the least incentive to do anything above and beyond. Their mental cogitation in the area of mediocrity is so stubborn that it would baffle you. Anyway, so one of the cleaning gals gets up at 4. She starts to work at 4 a.m. Breakfast is at 7:30. So 3.5 hours of work before breakfast. Then they work from 8 to noon, another 4 hours, and then they have a lunch. And then they work from noon to 5:30, so another 5.5 hours. Then they have a dinner, and then they get off at 6. So 4 to 6, what's that? 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Saturday's a little easier. They come in on Saturday, I think they can start at 7 and get off at 5 or something. So Saturday's a little easy. But 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, the fuck? That's how many hours? 84? So they have zero incentive to do anything above mediocrity and to move at a snail's pace. You know, like I said, someone's going to come up behind you with a stick and yell at you, maybe even whoop your ass. Here in China, you know, they get to work, motherfucker. But you put forth even an extra ounce of effort and you're killing yourself. You're already killing yourself. And that's just the standard of survival at that level. So how did I get here? Oh, so for me, being surrounded by this mentality, it tends to, what is it? There's a Chinese saying that if you do calligraphy, you're going to get ink stains on your hands. Which means that if you're near the ink, you're going to get some black on you. You go out in the mud, you play in the dirt, you're going to get dirty. So there will be an effect on you. You work around 25 to 50 million people in a mentality of dire mediocrity. It's bound to make you a little bit mediocre. But I grew up in and wow, I really made it through traffic fast today. So I'm gonna cut this short. But if you work in this environment, then it rubs off on you. But I grew up in an environment where you brush your hair back, you slick it back, you shave it up nice and tight, you know, put your tie on, and do your goddamnedest to be good at what you're doing and to seek out truth, beauty, justice, fairness, equanimity, rise above mediocrity, this kind of thing, so on and so forth. So that's part of my problem. It's taken me 20 years to try to subtly influence other folks around me into having that spirit. And I should have given up a long time ago. But, I mean, people would laugh at me and they'd say shit like, you ain't never gonna change. You're never going to have any type of effect on the vastness of the society with which you're up against. And I thought, you know what? I disagree. Because I will have subtle, small effects on all things. And once I get that ball rolling, things will move in my direction. And at a minimum, I will not lose my own treasure of dignity by falling into this abyss, the swamp of giving up and not striving to hone the edge. Because one day I will return to Western society, maybe or maybe not, but I will still have the refined character of a Western gentleman, and I will still have that dream in my heart of being the best I can be for no other reason than to be the best I can be. Not because I'm gonna get paid better for it, not because I think I'm gonna win a prize at the end of the fucking game, not because I think God is watching, but because goodness begots goodness. And like Marcus Aurelius said, and so many said before him, may have been Aristotle, a man's character is based on repeated actions of excellence. And it's not by accident or by chance that he becomes excellent, but the habit of being and doing excellence is what makes him that way, him or her. Remember, ladies, whenever we say him and man and stuff like that, it applies to everyone. It applies to the transsexuals and transvestites and homosexuals and him, hers, theys, thems, and whatever fucking pronoun you want to take. It's a general way of speaking.